Everyone to Daf Yomi Ketubot, 1 week at a time. This is our 16th and final lesson of Masechet Ketubot. Um, it's very exciting. We've been learning this Masechet for 16 weeks. We will be completing 112 dapim, really 111 because we start on page 2. But today we are going to be reviewing daf 107 till 112. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we will be finishing together. Those of you who um, are married and have their ktuva handy, I thought it would be nice if you want to share a picture or describe or show your ktuva. I thought it would be an interesting thing to see. But we can discuss that at the end. So let's learn the end of our masechet. We're going to be learning some more, I would say, disputes about money, and then we're going to finish speaking about the sanctity of Eretz Israel and the importance of living in Israel. So we have a lot to do today. So let's begin. So, Daf 107, Rav teaches us that we need to give mizonot, which again we've learned is support to married women to married women whose husbands are away. And Shmuel says, no, we don't need to support them. Um, why? Because Shmuel says that when the husband goes away, he leaves money for his wife. So the Gemara says that Rav agrees that for the first 3 months, you're right, we don't have to support her because the assumption is that the husband left money for her to be supported. And after that, however, Rav says that they do need, again, to go into the estate's property and to support the wife while her husband is away. If, however, they hear that he died, then everybody agrees that we support her, right? Because now there's no husband to support her. The machloket, though, is if we don't know if he died. So again, as we said, maybe he left her money and she's pretending that he didn't, or maybe he said to her before he left, listen, you have a job, so you buy your own food and you can keep, right? Or you buy your own food with the money that you're making. You don't have to, again, as we've seen previously in this Masechet, really when she earns a salary, the salary goes into the husband's estate or bank account. But he could have said to her, you know what, you keep the money that you're making and use that to buy your own food. And then she can, right, trick the court and say, oh, he left and I have no money. Give me money from, his bank account. And it turns out that she's not only keeping her money, but she's getting his money as well. So that's where we're concerned that people would be dishonest. Okay, so as we said, the court can go into his property and give his wife the money that she needs to buy food. However, they do not do this for his children. And we have seen this previously in the Masechet. Is the father obligated to support his children or not? And again, we say that here the case is where she heard, based on one witness, that he died, and then she can get remarried based on the one witness. However, the children can't inherit his property based on one witness. They actually need two witnesses. Now, let's say we have the Yivama, right? So we have um, a man who died. Excuse me. He left his widow, and so we say that for 3 months she's supported from the husband's property, the one who died, and then after 3 months, she's not supported from the husband's, and she's waiting for the Yavam, meaning his brother needs to marry her, and then he supports her. But if he doesn't, so then she's kind of like stuck. So the Gemara says that if the court says that they need to do Yibum, and let's say the Yavam, right, again, the husband's brother runs away and he says, I don't want to do Yibum, so then the court can actually go into the Yavam's estate or his bank account and take out money to support the Yivama, right? The woman who is waiting to do Yibum. Um, okay, now the Gemara brings another case. What if both the husband and the wife went overseas and then she comes back and says that he died? So she can either get mizonot, she can either be supported from the estate, or she can get her ktuva, right? Either or, right? Not both. If she does miyun, right? If the girl, right, we learned about miyun previously. If she's a minor and she was married off by her brother or her mother, till she is 12 years old, she's allowed to do miyun. Miyun means that she says, I don't want to be married to this person, and it basically annuls the wedding, right? She can actually just walk away from the marriage. If she does that, she is no longer supported by the husband's estate, right? Once she walks away, she does not, she cannot claim that she wants to get support. Um, Okay, but if she didn't do miyun and he went overseas, right, they're still married, and therefore she does get mizonot. She does get supported. Um, and now we have like stories of, again, different people um, who supported the women when the husbands went away. And the Gemara ends by saying on this topic that the law is like Rav, that she does get support through the court, and she is supported by her husband's estate when the husband goes away. Okay, next Mishnah. We have a lot of Mishnayot coming up. Let's say the husband went overseas and another man came, right? A neighbor, a friend, and he supported the wife. The husband didn't ask him to do it. When the husband gets back, the husband does not need to reimburse this other man, right? Because he can say, I didn't ask you to do that, so I don't have to pay you back. Or the other opinion is that the person who laid out the money takes an oath and says exactly how much he gave the wife, and then the husband does need to reimburse him that exact amount. So that's the machloket. Daf 108, the Gemara explains that, and here we're going to talk about people who take a neder, take a vow, which we're going to learn next week all about. But if a person swears to not have any benefit from somebody else, he can still pay for his machatzit hashekel. Do you remember when we learned in Masechet Shkalim a long time ago about the half shekel coin that was given once a year as taxes to the temple, to the Beit HaMikdash, and it was used to buy sacrifices. So this was a tax, and someone can do it for somebody else, and it's not seen as benefit. It's actually seen as doing a mitzvah for another person, but not out of, let's say, personal benefit. The truth is he's getting spiritual benefit, but not personal benefit. He can also pay a loan for him, and that seems to be connected to the Mishnah that we just mentioned. Okay, the next Mishnah, if you remember last week, we had said Hanan ruled or decreed 2 things, and Admon ruled 7 things. So now we're going to learn about the 7 things that Admon, who was one of the judges of Jerusalem, what are some of the things that he says? So the first thing is that if a man dies, we give money to the boys, right? The boys inherit the father, the sons. But if it's a small estate, then the daughters inherit or are supported by the money in the estate, and the boys have to go and ask for charity, right? Because it's not modest for the girls to have to go door to door asking for charity. Rather, the money goes to the girls, and the boys ask for charity. Admon says, why should I, a male, lose out, if the estate is so small? So he seems to disagree with this statement. The next Mishnah, um, if someone claims that another person owes him jugs of oil, right? So Ruvain goes to Shimon and he says, Shimon, you owe me, these jugs of oil. And then Shimon says, I borrowed jugs, or, I owe you the jugs, but not oil, just the jugs. So Admon says that this person needs to take an oath that this is all that he owes, because we have a concept called modeh b'miktzat. Modeh b'miktzat. In English, that means someone who admits partially, right? So if again, our case is you owe me jugs of oil, and he says, no, 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 I just owe you jugs. Admon says this is a partial admission of the loan, right? Really, it's usually taught as someone says, you owe me $100, and the person says, what are you talking about? I owe you $50. So the Gemara says that if someone admits to partial payment, then they need to take an oath that that's all that they owe, and then they can pay back what they said. So here there's a discussion: is admitting to jugs but not the oil, is that seen as a partial admission or not? The sages say, no, 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 that's not what we call modeh b'miktzat. It's not the same thing, and therefore he does not have to take an oath. So the Gemara explains, again, a different case. If someone says, you owe me wheat and barley, and then the person says, no, 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 I only owe you wheat, right? So he doesn't need to swear according to the sages, because that's not seen as partial. Partial is 50 as opposed to 100, but we're still talking about apples and apples. But if I say wheat and barley, and you say, no, 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 only wheat, that's, I was going to say apples and oranges, but it's actually wheat and barley, right? It's two different things. So the sages say that's not the same idea as partial admission, and therefore you do not have to swear. Again, the Gemara brings another opinion that he does need to swear, and therefore, in our case as well, he would need to swear. Right? Again, if someone said, you owe me 10 jugs worth of oil, and he says, no, 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 I only owe you jugs, that's, again, not seen as modeh b'miktzat. It's not partial admission. But if he says jugs of oil, and that includes the jugs, so then it is seen as partial. Right? So let's say he says, "Oh, I never took oil, but I do have 5 jugs of yours." So again, he can make him swear about the jugs, and then he can extend the oath to include other things. Okay, next Mishnah. A person said he would give money to the son-in-law for a dowry, right? The two, right, the parents and the children are sitting together, and the father of the bride says, I promise to give you, $10,000. And then the father lost all his money, right? The stock market crashed. He has no more money. And now he can't pay the dowry that he said he would. Daf 109. The groom, right, the chatan, doesn't have to marry her, says the Mishnah. Right? Again, there was an agreement. You said you were going to give me $10,000. Now you can't. So I don't have to go into that marriage. Admon says that the bride can say, listen, what's going on here, right? It's my father who made that promise, not me. Either marry me or divorce me, but you can't just leave me hanging, right? According to the first opinion, he can say, I'll wait. When your father gives me the $10,000, then we'll get married. And she says, that's not fair. Either marry me or divorce me. So that's another statement by Admon. The Gemara explains the Mishnah um, that the machloket is actually when she promised to give the money, right? Not the father, but she promised. And then, right, she says, oh, let's get married. It's going to be amazing. I'll give you $10,000. But she really meant, my father's going to give you $10,000, right? She thought her father would pay for it, and now he can't pay for it, and then it seems that she's either stuck or not. Um, and then the Gemara discusses, is this only with an adult woman? What about a minor? If it's a minor, we do force him. And then the Gemara says, who do we force to do what, right? Who's him, right? What do we do? So the Gemara says either we force the father to pay or the husband to marry or divorce her. And the Gemara says that in all of these cases where Admon made a statement, if Rabban Gamliel agreed with him, so then we follow Admon's statement. Um, and the Gemara says, no, right, the law is actually like Hanan in both of the statements that he made and the seven statements of Admon. Maybe all seven statements are the law, or it seems maybe only three out of seven are the law that we follow. Okay, next Mishnah on Daf 109. If someone protests the sale of a field, right? There's someone says, "Oh, I'm selling my field," and someone else says, "What are you talking about? You're selling that field? Someone else owns that field, or I own that field," right? But if he's the one who signed on the document of sale, now we have a problem. So Admon says um, it's we do believe him because it's easier to deal with the second owner, and therefore he signed on this sale document, and it doesn't prove that he doesn't own or that the other person doesn't own it. The sages says no. If he's the one who signed the original document, then he loses his right to claim ownership, right? Why would he sign a sale document if really he owns the property? So the sages say we do not believe him that he actually owns the land. The Gemara explains that if he was the judge that sat in judgment of this document, then that would be okay. If he used the sale as the border to his own field, so then that does work. And there's the story of a man who did this and then he died. And then he lost the ability to say that the other field was his field. Okay, next Mishnah. Someone went overseas, and when he came back, he lost the path to his field, right? So let's say he had a field, it was surrounded by four other fields, and there used to be a path, but he went away for so long that, either it was grown over or someone planted on it, but he now doesn't have any access to his field that's in the middle. So the Mishnah says the Mishnah says that Admon says that he can use the shortest route, meaning he figures out what's the shortest way to get to his field, and that path becomes his property. Or the sages say, no, he lost that path, and now he needs to buy the rights to that path, or he can fly over everybody's field and get to his field. One could see how that would be complicated. The Gemara explains, right, again, there are four different fields surrounding, and he can't go to anyone to get the path, right, because everyone could say, oh, go to the other guy, right? or maybe it was one person who used to own it and now it's split up into four, or four people sold it and now it's owned by one person. Um, Again, he can take the shortest path. Um, a person said, "Give my daughter a palm tree when I die." And then what happened? He died, and all the brothers, right, all the children, the sons, took the property, and they didn't give her the palm tree. And the Gemara says, no, 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 they have to give her the palm tree, and then they can resplit the property, meaning you have to listen to what the father asked, and then you can assign the property based on how they want to split it up. Okay, Daf 110. The Mishnah tells us um, Reuven has a document that says that Shimon owes him money, right? So like an you owe me kind of thing, right? You owe me money. Shimon has a document that says that Reuven sold him a field, right? So what happens? Admon says that Shimon can say, well, right, you have a document that says I bought the field. You should have collected the money when you sold me the field, but you didn't, so I don't owe you money anymore. The sages say, no, no, no. Shimon um, is very smart. And now, right, Reuven can take the field, right, for, again, uh, it, Shimon bought the field, and now Reuven can take it back as payment for the original loan. The Gemara says, again, um, the machloket is when they wrote the document and then they gave the money, where it becomes complicated who owes who money versus land. Okay, next Mishnah. Two people have documents that the other person owes them the same amount of money, right? You owe me $100, and he says, no, 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 you owe me $100. So Admon says one person can say, if I owe you money, why would you borrow money from me? That doesn't make sense. Therefore, your document is false. The sages say, no, no, no. We believe both documents. You have to give him $100, and then he has to give you $100. So the Gemara is going to explain this. Right, again, either right, the first opinion is everybody just keeps their money, or the Gemara says everyone keeps their own land, right? Let's say they owe each other land. Everyone just keeps their own land. You don't have to, trade. But here we're going to discuss, the Gemara gets into the topic of different types of land. So according to the Gemara, there are three, or according to Jewish law, there are three types of land. Prime real estate, or really in terms of agriculture, right? The best land for development, for growth, for agriculture. So that's the best. Then there's, right, that's called Edit. Then there's average, excuse me, which is called Benonit, average. And then there's Ziburit, the lowest quality of land. So there's a machloket if these categories are objective or subjective, meaning, is there an objective understanding of best, average, worst, or is it subjective to what I own? If I own a lot of land, right, and it's all really amazing, so then my worst is going to be maybe better than your best, right? Because it becomes like a sliding scale. So that's the discussion here on DAF 110. The discussion is there, right, if maybe they're different, if it's subjective, so then we would say that you switch land, because what's average to me is not necessarily average to you. And therefore, they would have to pay each other back. Or if it's objective, then there's really no point in switching land, because why would you just switch land? Stay with the land that you had. Okay, next Mishnah. There are three areas in Eretz Israel, in Israel, with regards to marriage. We've seen this a little bit before. We've seen it more in two areas. Now we're going to discuss three areas. One is Yehuda, right? Judah, which is the southern, center southern part of Israel. We have Ever Hayarden, which is the other side of the Jordan, and we have the Galil, the Galilee, the north. And these were seen as three separate regions. What does that mean? The Mishnah explains a husband cannot make his wife move from one region to another. Again, it could be in terms of quality of life, which we'll see. It could also be in terms of being far from her friends, from her relatives, from her family. Right? There's no Zoom and there's no phone calls. So, right, it's like as if you're moving to another country. That's not fair to do to the wife. But within one region, you are allowed to move from one town to another. He can now this is interesting also. He cannot make her move from a town to a city, meaning small town, big city, or the opposite, from a big city to a small town. The Gemara is going to explain why. You can go from a bad neighborhood to a good neighborhood, but not the opposite. Rabban Gamliel says you can't even go from a bad neighborhood to a good neighborhood. Again, to force her. If she is fine to go, then that's great, but you can't force her. And Rabban Gamliel says if you go from a bad neighborhood to a good neighborhood, it's not good for your health. Um, uh, okay, so the Gemara is going to explain, right? You can't go from a town to a city because it's hard to live in the big city. And change in routine, right? Bad neighborhood, good neighborhood, change in routine can lead to stomach illness, literally illness, and therefore he cannot force her to move. Okay, next Mishnah. And since we're talking about being forced to move, so the next Mishnah is a very famous Mishnah, which says that everyone can be forced to move to Eretz Israel. Meaning, if a husband wants to move to Israel and his wife doesn't want to, he can force her to move, and vice versa. If the wife wants to move and the husband doesn't want to move, she can force him to move to Israel, right, and to Yerushalayim, right, from living somewhere else in Israel to Yerushalayim. It's seen as, right, the best place to live, but they cannot force one another to move away from Yerushalayim or from Israel, right? And the Mishnah says men and women. Married, let's say a person married a woman in Israel, but then he divorced her in Israel. He needs to give her the currency, right, for her ketubah of Israeli currency. But let's say if he married her in Israel and divorced her outside of Israel, or the opposite, he can give her money of Israel or local currency. But if they got married outside of Israel and got divorced outside of Israel, you have to use the current currency of where you are living. Okay, the Gemara says that even that slaves also can be forced to move to Israel. And again, we said you can force the family to live in a right. Let's say you live in a fancy neighborhood outside of Israel, and the option is to move to to downsize to Israel. You can still force the spouse to come to Israel, meaning Israel trumps the big house as opposed to the small house. Interestingly, if a slave runs away to Israel, right from outside, you are not allowed to remove him outside of Israel, right, because of the mitzvah of settling in Israel, right? And these last dapim talk about the importance of living in Israel, and it's so important as we see, right? One spouse can force the other to move to Israel. And If they do not want to move to Israel, then you can force them to give you a get, right? To be divorced, right? Let's say the woman says, I want to live in Israel. He says, no way. She says, fine, if you don't want to, right? I'm going. And if you don't want to come, then you need to give me a divorce. And that does work in both ways, right? The man or the woman. The Gemara says that it's better to live in Israel in a city where it's majority non-Jews than to live outside of Israel in a city where it's a majority of Jews. I think it's, again, a fascinating discussion. The Gemara says, because if you live in Israel, you have a God, right? This is based on a verse that God, is, again, it doesn't mean that God is not outside of Israel, but if you live in Israel, you are connected to God on a different level. And if you're outside of Israel, it's very difficult to connect on that level. It can go a little bit even more extreme. There's an opinion in the Gemara that says that if you live outside of Israel, it's as if you are worshiping idols. Sorry. But again, I think the idea here is I don't think you're idol worshippers. I think the idea here is the importance of living in Israel, right? Again, don't forget we're learning Talmud Bavli, right? This is written in Bavel. We're going to get to Bavel in a minute, but right, we want to impress upon everyone the importance of living in Israel. So we have a story. Rabbi Zera wanted to move to Israel, but his teacher of Yehuda said that you cannot move to Israel. The top of Daf 111, Rabbi Yehuda felt that based on a verse that God would take them out of Bavel and that they had no right to go to Israel on their own. And there are still people who feel this way, that they're waiting for a miraculous event to bring them all to Israel. Until then, they're staying outside of Israel. Rabbi Zera disagreed. Rabbi Zera felt that even based on the same verses, that that individuals need to move to Israel, can move to Israel, should move to Israel. And here, the Daf 111, again, I think very famously, has this idea that there were 3 oaths that God made the Jewish people promise. One is that they cannot conquer Israel as a nation, which again is interesting because we are here. 2, that the Jews are not allowed to rebel against foreign rule. And 3, that non-Jews, right, this was an oath to the non-Jews, that they're not allowed to subjugate the Jews too much, right? And the way the sages understand this now, at least the Zionist sages, say because the non-Jews broke the promise to not subjugate the Jews, all of these vows are kind of void, and therefore the Jewish people are allowed to revolt against the non-Jews who are subjugating them, and they are allowed to conquer Eretz Yisrael, create a Jewish state, live in Israel, fill in all Zionist ideas here. We said that there were 3 oaths. There's another opinion that there were 6 oaths. What are the other 3? That the prophets are not allowed to reveal what the end of days is going to look like or when it was going to happen. And they cannot distance that date, meaning by doing sins. And 3, they cannot reveal those secrets to the non-Jews. And from here, we're going to talk about the end of days as well. So let's go to the positive sides of living in Israel. If you live in Israel, you will live without sin. It seems your sins are forgiven. And if you are, let's say you couldn't live in Israel, the Gemara on Daf 111 says that if you are buried in Israel, then it's as if you're buried under the altar, meaning you are forgiven of all your sins. And therefore, The Gemara talks about different sages that, even though they lived outside of Israel, made it very clear that they wanted to live in, they wanted to be buried in Israel. Um, and since we're talking about, again, the importance of Eretz Yisrael, of Israel, the Gemara also adds that Bavel is like number two, right? So if you can't live in Israel, at least you should live in Bavel, in Babylonia, and it's better than all the other countries around because, again, don't forget, the Torah center is in Bavel. And some say that the Chazon Ish said this about Poland, right? When they were living in Poland, when that was the center of Judaism, he said, you can't leave Poland because this is the Torah center. So it's interesting how Torah centers have moved around the world. Okay. Okay, so now there's a machloket if only those buried in Israel will come back to life, right? We believe in what's called Tchiyat HaMetim, the resurrection of the dead. We believe that everyone is going to come back, but here there's a machloket, right? Some say only if you're buried in Israel. Others say that so first of all, anybody who's buried in Israel is going to come back. And if you're buried outside, we're not sure. We'll get back to that in 1 minute. We also learned that if you walk 4 steps in Eretz Yisrael, you are going to get Olam Haba, right? You get a portion in the next world if you just walk in Eretz Yisrael. So here, the Gemara says, okay, if you're buried outside of Israel, it's not that you're not going to be resurrected. Rather, you are going to be resurrected, but you need to get to Israel. How are you going to get to Israel? You're buried in the ground in the wrong country. So you're going to have to roll. You're going to have to roll to Israel. And then the Gemara says, wait a minute, you're going to make righteous people roll around in the ground? That doesn't make sense. You're going to get a tunnel. Exactly. You are going to get a tunnel that will bring you, fast pass, express lane, all the way to Israel. And it will not be painful. But interesting here, the Gemara brings up, right, Yaakov, right, Jacob tells his children, make sure you bury me in Israel, right? And they say, the Gemara asks, why? Was he afraid that he wouldn't get to Eretz Israel? He's righteous. He said, no, he was concerned maybe he wouldn't merit, that fast pass. So, right, maybe he won't merit that tunnel. So he said, you know what, just make sure that you bury me in Israel. The same thing with Joseph, with Yosef. The Gemara talks about people who do not keep mitzvot, or people who are distant from Torah, maybe they won't come back. And the Gemara says, no, even if they don't learn Torah, if they support people who learn Torah, then they will also come back to life. And we said, right, these righteous people are going to be, tunneled into Israel. Where are they going to come up? They're going to come up in Jerusalem, right? Just like the grass, right, breaks through the ground, so too the righteous people will come up in Jerusalem, and they will come up clothed. I like how the Gemara says, how do we know that they're going to be clothed when they come out of the ground? We learn it from wheat. Why? Because wheat, the grain, when you bury it, when you plant it, but when you bury it naked, right? You peel off the outside and you put it in the ground. And when it comes up, right, it grows, it comes up covered. It's clothed, right? It's clothed. So too, the righteous people, you're burying them clothed, right, in shrouds. So obviously they're going to come back clothed. So I think it's just a beautiful idea of, how clearly this is what's going to happen. And since we're talking about the end of days, Tchiyat HaMetim, in this time of the resurrection of all the of all the people. What's going to happen? Not only will people, what not only will it be miraculous that everyone will come up, but also the land will produce miraculous things. Well, like what? The wheat is going to grow like a palm tree, right? Instead of being little grain, it's going to be a huge tree. Um, and then what's going to happen? God is going to make a huge wind come, and flour is just going to rain down from the tree, and you're going to collect the flour, and you're going to be able to bake and eat and support your family. And the Gemara says that not only will the grain grow large, but grapes are going to grow very large, and it'll be very easy to make wine. And since we're talking about wine, so the Gemara and the end of days. So the Gemara gives a story about someone who went to Bnei Brak. Again, I love when current cities are in the Gemara, right? They went to Bnei Brak and they saw these goats eating figs, and like the fig honey is like dripping down, and the honey is dripping down, and the goats' udders are like leaking milk. And he says, now I understand that this is the land of, right, flowing milk and honey, right? So the milk and the honey is just flowing everywhere. Um, and there are more stories of different people in different cities in Israel where they're seeing the honey and which is really like sap from trees or fruits, and the milk just flowing, in the streets. Daf 112, our last daf. We have more stories about miraculous large fruit in Israel. Not only will that happen in the end of days, but the Gemara brings stories of people who grew this like miraculous fruit, and it seems to be connected to the way people are behaving. If they're behaving well, then they're blessed and the produce is very plentiful, and if not, then the produce basically suffers. And back to Israel. Israel is compared to a deer, a tzvi, a deer. Why? Because apparently, if you skin a deer, the hide. I don't know if the hide shrinks or the meat is very large, but there's no way to put, I guess, like figuratively, but like you couldn't put the skin back on the deer because it wouldn't hold all the meat. So too, Israel cannot contain all the produce that it's going to produce, meaning it's going to be such abundance, right? The word shefa comes to mind, right? Shefa means abundance, right? Just overflowing with produce. Or a deer is the swiftest animal, and Israel is the fastest to produce fruit. Um, and right, there's a story of Rabbi Elazar who moved to Israel, and he was saved from 3 curses because he moved to Israel. He got smicha, and he learned how to calculate the calendar, so he was saved. And again, we have Rabbi Zera coming to Israel, and he gets to the other side of the Jordan River, and he's looking for the ferry, and the ferry's not there, and he doesn't know what to do. So he decides, I'm just walking across. Those of you who have seen the Jordan River, there are places where it is actually very easy to walk across. So he just walks across, and they say, why don't you wait for the ferry? And he says, I'm here. I'm just so excited. I want to be in Israel as fast as I can. And more stories of rabbis who get to Israel and kiss the ground or roll in the stones and the dust of Israel just to be connected to the land. And the Gemara ends by saying that in the future, right, not right, basically all the fruits, all the trees of Israel. will produce fruit, and right, even the non-fruit bearing trees are going to bear fruit. So I think, right, this idea of abundance, of blessing that is very clear in Eretz Israel is the theme of these last few dapim. And with that, Hadran alach Masechet Ketuvot, right? We will return to you Masechet Ketuvot. Um, I think that this was a long masechet, and there was really a lot. I think a lot that we can take away from this masechet. We learned a lot about. I think about the protection of women, how women were right within the document of the ketuvah. The rabbis wanted to make sure that women will be protected, that they will be provided for, and I think that it's really such a zchut to have learnt this masechet with all of you. And I thought it would be nice if someone wants to share. I actually uploaded a picture of my ktuva. Here's my ktuva that my mother-in-law made. I don't see her right now in the screen, but oh yeah, are you there? Yeah, I see her. Top of her head. Yeah. So my mother-in-law is an artist, and she painted this. I'll actually just give you a short little story about this ktuva. This is not our original ktuva. My mother-in-law made us a beautiful ktuva for our wedding, and we had it in a box in our house. Unfortunately, for a number of I would probably say months, because we didn't get around to taking it to the framer. And we had a woman who was cleaning our house, and she picked up the box and she's like, "Oh, there's nothing here," and she threw it down the incinerator. And if you remember, we did learn: are you allowed to right? Are you still married if you don't have your ktuva? Many people say, "Oh no, you can't even sleep in the same house." You can, but we quickly called our rabbi and we asked, what can we do? And there's actually a document that we needed to go get, that we needed to sign with witnesses that says, basically these poor people lost their ktuva, and this is the replacement. So we actually have that document in our important document files. And then a number of years later, my wonderful mother-in-law made us a new ktuva, and this is our ktuva. So you can see it here.
Can
Here.
you move the video down or up or down? So I can't even see it. I just see the top of it.
Oh, here. Can you see it now?
Not
Uh,
yet. I don't
okay.
know.
Here, here you can see it. It has palm trees because my name is Tamara. So Tamara
Yeah.
means date tree, palm tree, and it has the walls of Jerusalem because my husband's name is Ben Zion. So
His
this is
name is embedded in the stones.
his name is embedded in the stones. What do you mean?
I understand that, but I can't see it.
You have to
Um,
look carefully in the stones of the wall.
No, I can't see the wall because I'm only seeing the top half of it.
oh, um, I
Okay,
don't know why.
when you get home, you'll see it. You
Here,
have
this
to
is
look.
our. Here, you can see here. I'll blow up the. This is our logo with our names on it. Um, yeah. Um, anyway, this is it, and I don't know if someone else
Beautiful.
wants to share I don't know, a picture of their. Oh, someone's showing. Let's see. Zohar is showing her ktuva. Let's see.
It's actually a form that's just filled in. It's the Rabbanut form, and it's filled in. It's hard to see.
Uh, So here in Israel, wait, I wonder if I can make you like a big, wait, move to stage. Wait, let's do it again. Can people see Zohar now better, like bigger? Okay. So here in Israel, when you get married, you can actually you go to the religious offices and they give you a very nice ketubah that you fill in at your wedding, and everybody can get the same one, or you can go to like an artist and have yours, custom made. But if you remember, we talked about, right, you have to put in the date, you have to put in the place, you have to put in the names. Um,
Mhm.
and then remember, we talked about, here, it even says, hold on 1 minute, I can read, 1 second. Right, the Khatan promises to support his wife. And give her, right, hold on, to give her, right, clothing and feed her, and uh, hold on 1 second. And it
Roof
also,
over, roof over his head, roof over her
right,
head,
right, and
and conjugal rights.
yes,
Those are the
exactly.
four.
Exactly. Right, and here it says, right, Mataim Kesef, right? He's going to give Mataim, that's the 200, plus a Tosefet, right? So we were always learning about the addition, right? So that's actually in the Ktuva, right? Tosefta da, he added to it. And
Mhm.
different Ktuvas have different either amounts, but right, and he promises to support her in the base price plus the tosefet, right? And here are at the bottom you have witnesses who sign right. It's a document. It's a legal document, and therefore you need to have it signed by two valid witnesses. Um, so I just think it's amazing, that this is what we just learned about for the past. I don't know how long we've been learning, but I guess 111 days. So we've been learning about this for a while, so just beautiful. And yeah, and wishing everyone a Mazal Tov. I hope you're
Thank
all
you.
having a celebration with friends or family. Um,
And
so
can we all wish you a happy birthday tomorrow?
Oh,
thank
happy
you.
Yom
Happy
Huledet
birthday.
Sameach, Yom Huledet. So,
Very
Thank
nice.
you.
you're
Thank you.
welcome. Yeah.
Thank
Can
you.
you remind us again how much 200 zoos are or 100 zoos?
How much is the actual value?
Yeah.
Um,
In today's money,
in
Yes.
today's money?
I
Yeah,
think a
right.
Zeus is something like a penny.
No, 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 no. It's a lot.
A
It's a
lot?
lot.
It's a lot. Wait 1 second. I'll end the recording. So I just want to wish everyone uh, a wonderful week. Chodesh Tov. Yes,
Understood.
it's a Rosh Chodesh today, and I will answer your question 1 minute, but I'll just end the recording. I will see everyone next week. Don't forget to register for the new class so that you're on that email list.
Oh, yeah.
The new class is for Masechet Nidarim. We're going to learn all about vows and oaths. You're all going to start saying bli neder, right? Not a neder, right? We don't want to commit to anything. But we will meet regular time, Bezrat Hashem, next Tuesday with an introduction and the first week of Masechet Nidarim. Wishing everyone a wonderful week.